Science Center, and I'm going to be teaching you a lesson today on archaeology. So we have a lot to cover because archaeology is actually a subcategory of anthropology, so we're going to talk about that a little bit. And all of my homeschool kids out there that did this lesson with me last month, don't worry, because this is an opportunity to show your expertise on the subject to your parents and your brothers and sisters. So I'll be asking some questions, and you guys are my experts out there to have the answers ready. So also, I will be sharing some artifacts that I didn't have the first time around, so you guys will get to see those too. So for everybody that's joining us for the first time for the archaeology lesson, buckle up, it's going to be a fun ride. So first off, I want to talk to you guys about what anthropology is. So anthropology is a social science. So a lot of times when we think of science, we think of the physical sciences like biology or chemistry, but social sciences are out there too, and these are sciences like psychology and sociology and anthropology. So anthropology is the study of man. Anthro means man, ology means study of. So there are 4 subcategories. The first one is physical. So this is one we think of a lot, because this has to do with anything with bones, animal or human bones, or it has to do with primates, so apes and chimpanzees. So you can see our friend right here. So he's a great example of physical anthropology. And then we also have, there is a very famous scientist named Jane Goodall who studied chimpanzees for 60 years. So when Jane Goodall was living with the chimpanzees and studying them, she was actually studying their family life. So their mom, their dad, their brothers and sisters, and how that family unit was very similar to the family units that we have too as people. So very, very cool study. Then we have linguistics. So linguistics is the study of language. So language, different types of language written down, speaking, all kinds of stuff that has to do with that. So you can say, see, I have a bunch of different types of hello written on the board in different languages. So it's pretty cool. It also studies different kinds of language that we speak in one country. So for example, in America, we have different ways of saying different things, and these are called dialects. So for example, you could call it a Coke, you can call it a pop, you can call it soda. It's the same thing, but we call it a different thing based on the region that we come from or we learn that word from. So I'm from up north, so I call it pop, but a lot of people down here in the south might call it Coke or soda. Same thing, different words. So this happens all the time. Same with I say you guys, somebody might say y'all instead. Same thing, same word, same meaning, just a slight tweak on it because that's just language. It just changes and alters. So pretty cool. Third branch, sociocultural. This has to do with living people. So sociocultural anthropology is cultures that are around today that we study today. This could be an example of maybe there's a Navajo tribe that lives in Arizona and somebody wants to go and learn how to weave blankets the same style the Navajos do. They might go study with them. Or it could be somebody, walking around and they want to learn more about comic book culture or cartoon culture, and they go and they interview a bunch of people about who their favorite superhero is, and then you can compile a study which says which favorite superheroes there are in America. Like who are our favorites, who are our least favorites. So you can do a study about that too. So sociocultural anthropology, you can talk about anything because you're talking about culture. All of these are connected by culture. And culture is kind of a tough word to define because culture has a lot of different meanings to a lot of different people. So it's basically how a group of people does something. It's a way of life. So culture can be the way that we dress, the foods that we eat, the language that we speak, maybe our religion, the arts that we practice, music, songs, all of that can be culture. So culture is just basically something that a group of people practices. And it's pretty cool because a lot of different things are composed of our culture. And in America especially, it's really cool because we are a melting pot because a lot of people immigrated here from other countries. And so we bring our culture with us whenever we move to a new place. So we have a whole kind of melting pot of cultures in America, which is really neat. Also, I want to talk about our final subculture, archaeology. So archaeology is the study of past cultures. And it's pretty cool. It's a really, really cool branch because you are basically a detective and you are uncovering clues to learn more about that past culture. Because a lot of times the people aren't around anymore and they don't have any historical record. A lot do, some don't. We'll talk about that in a little bit. So a lot of times you're using clues and trying to figure things out and not have a lot of data at your hands to do it. So you're a detective trying to figure out the puzzle. This thing I have on my head, this is called a pith helmet. This is something that archaeologists were famous for wearing in the 1800s, 1900s. So it is actually a military helmet from the Philippine Army, and it was kind of adopted by a lot of Egyptologists who were archaeologists that studied in Egypt because it's very hard. So if you tap on it, it kind of protects your head. So if they were digging in the tombs and maybe some rocks would fall, it would protect their head and keep it safe. But the pith helmet just ended up being kind of a thing, a recognizable symbol of archaeologists. And mine is pink because I like pink. And just because you're a female scientist doesn't mean that you can't be colorful and wear pink pretty stuff. So yeah, so next up, archaeology, I want to talk to you about the two different types real quick. So there's prehistoric. So prehistoric archaeology just means before a writing system was in place. So this can be a very, very ancient culture, like a caveman culture, or this can be a more recent culture, like there are some Native American tribes that don't have a writing system that are only 300 years old. And all it means is that there's no writing system that we have found. Then we have historic archaeology, which means there's a writing system in place. So this is where it gets kind of confusing because there could be a prehistoric archaeological site that's 300 years old and an archaeological site that's 5,000 years old. So that's historic. So you'd never quite know, if which one, because prehistoric doesn't necessarily mean ancient, whereas historic doesn't mean modern. So it gets a little bit confusing. So the example of this is Egypt. So the Egyptians, we have found hieroglyphics that date back to 5,000 years ago. So this group of Egyptians that was writing their hieroglyphics 5,000 years ago, that's a historic culture. So we were able to study it, we were able to translate it, to read those hieroglyphics, to see shopping lists or letters. It's pretty cool. So archaeology is awesome. Just like detectives, we're using our clues to work out the mystery, to learn more about these ancient people. So pretty cool. All right, there's also underwater archaeology too, and that's where you go and you look at like ships that have sank, and you learn more about it. Scuba divers go in that are archaeologists and you learn more about those. So pretty cool. They found some really cool stuff like in Greece and Rome around the water there. They've found some really cool ships that have a lot of artifacts still on there. And that's our next word is artifacts. So archaeologists studying people and cultures that are no longer around, and they study artifacts. And artifacts are pretty much just the objects that were made and used by people that we discover. So here's a question. What types of artifacts, like what things would a culture leave behind? So if a culture is settled in an area, they get up and move, what are the things they would leave behind? So the answer, a lot of times, is trash. Because if you are flint knapping something, if you're making a stone tool, or maybe you have a piece of pottery and it breaks, you're not going to take that with you when you move. You're going to leave it, you're going to throw it away. So a lot of times archaeologists are discovering trash from all of these ancient cultures. And trash is great because we can learn a lot of information about trash. For example, in Rome, if you go to a Roman site and you look at a piece of pottery, there might be some residue of food on the inside. So you might find flour and honey, and archaeologists and scientists can use these clues to analyze what that food was and discover what they were eating back then. So maybe they can find out that boys and girls were eating cakes just like we do. So pretty cool. Also, they have actually found in Egyptian pyramids that 1,000 years old pots of beer. So the Egyptians a long time ago liked to party too. So pretty cool. So 1,000-year-old beer. Once archaeologists discover a place that people used to live, this is called a site, then they will start to excavate. No do-overs in archaeology. You are digging, and if you end up breaking an artifact, then you can't go back in time and fix that. So you have to just be very careful when you're digging. So you don't want to damage the artifacts, and this is hard because as you are excavating, you're destroying what you're studying. And like I said, there's no do-overs. You got to get it right on the first try. But if you don't get it right on the first try, it's not the end of the world. That's why we document everything. So archaeologists are fantastic at drawing pictures of their sites and documenting every step of the way, because if something does happen and an artifact does get damaged by accident, then they have the record of what the site looked like beforehand. So we try to cover our bases. We also don't always know what's under the ground, so when you're excavating and digging, you never dig down because this might damage things that we can't see. You're always going to dig across, and we'll talk about that a little bit. So yeah, so as you're digging across, you're digging horizontally, not vertically. So since what we're excavating is being destroyed, like I said, we are excellent artists. So this is an example of like a little grid map that we can use to document how we are drawing that and how we're, making sure that we remember everything that's at the site. And we are going to talk, the last thing is about stratigraphy. So stratigraphy, for all my homeschoolers out there, hopefully you remember this word. Stratigraphy is the setting of layers. So layers that are called strata. So there's different layers of strata, and archaeologists use stratigraphy to study the different layers. So to do this, we start at the top. This is usually the youngest layer, and then you work your way down horizontally, not vertically. You work your way down to the oldest layer, which is usually at the bottom. So when we do this, it's because a lot of times in culture, different villages might build on top of one another. So there might be a village and then a flood comes along, wipes it out, the people pick up their stuff and move. Another culture comes 1,000 years later, builds houses there. Another flood comes, they move. Another culture, another culture, another culture. So you can see these layers are building up. So a lot of times when the archaeologists see something like this, like a mound or something like this, they can excavate that and get clues. So they start at the top, which is usually the youngest, and then they work their way layer by layer until they find the oldest. So if we dig down like this, then you're mixing up all the layers, and it's a lot harder to date something that way. So remember, horizontal. All right, so I want to talk to you guys about an activity. So this activity is going to be on our Facebook page in the comment section, and it's going to be pictures, so you're able to print these out. But it's called a cookie excavation. So my homeschoolers, we did this together. So if you've never done this before, you're an archaeologist tasked with this assignment. If you have done this before, then you are the expert archaeologist in your field, and your team is your family, and you have to make sure they do it right without breaking it. So we have the cookie excavation. What this looks like is you take a cookie, so you can take a chocolate chip cookie. I have a Reese's peanut butter cookie, and what you're going to do is you're going to take your grid, and there's two different grids on here. There's this one, which is the cookie excavation site, and then there's the grid map. So the cookie excavation site, you're just going to draw your cookie, and your cookie is going to be your site, and you are going to excavate this site. So you're going to draw your cookie on it, and then what you're going to do is you're just going to take your artifacts, which are your chocolate chips or your Reese's Pieces chips, and you're just going to draw them on the grid where they are on the cookie. So that's all you're doing. So I have a hidden one right here, so I want to make sure I have that in. And then what you're going to do is you're going to excavate with a toothpick, and you're just going to very, very carefully go horizontally, not down. You're going to go across, and you're going to try to excavate those chocolate chips or those candies out of your cookie without damaging the cookie. And then this grid over here, this one is for anything that's hidden, anything you can't see. So this one is your surface. This one is underneath all those mysterious chocolate chips you can't see. All right, I'm going to let you guys do this in your own time, because I want to share with you some of the artifacts that I brought with me. So we talked about my pith helmet already, pretty cool. So I want to show you guys some of these things over here. So a lot of, well, these are all replicas because, true artifacts belong in a museum. So I have replicas with me. So the first one was a gift from my grandmother, and this is a replica of a piece of Greek pottery. So a lot of times when archaeologists are in the field, they're not going to find whole pieces. They might. If you do find a whole pot, you're really lucky. But usually you're going to find pottery sherds that look like this or are even smaller. So this is an example of a Greek pot, and it's a necklace. It's made of plastics. It's obviously not real. But what archaeologists can do is if they find a crumbled pot that's broken and all the pieces are pretty whole, they can put it back together. So a lot of museums will do this. They'll take it and they'll build the pot back, and it looks pretty cool. So check it out next time you're in a museum. This over here, so I went to a site in Serbia that is a very, very old site called Lipinski Vir. So I don't know if you guys can see this, but these are some of the artifacts from that site. So it's a Mesolithic site that comes from about 9,000 years ago. Lipinski Vir, and this was a necklace I got from it. So it's just a replica of one of the little faces of these stone statues. And these statues were like this big, and they're solid stone, and they're pretty cool because they had all these different facial expressions. So that's from that site. And then this one, this is a replica of an Egyptian necklace. So what they did was the British Museum, they took all of these clay beads, and in the real necklace, these are actually made of carnelian and different kinds of gemstones, but mine are plastic. But they had clay beads and all kinds of gemstones, and then at the very center is a little statue, a little Bastet statue. So Bastet was the goddess of protection in Egyptian mythology and the goddess of children. So she's a pretty cool character. So a lot of people would wear this necklace for protection, or maybe a lot of kids would wear it because she was a protector of children. This little guy, this is from Cyprus, which is an island off the coast of Turkey. And it was just one of the artifacts that they found, one of the little statues that they found. So it's a replica of that. And then this is my favorite. So this is a Viking ship, you can see. And this comes from Novgorod, Russia. So Novgorod, Russia is the oldest city in Russia. It was founded in 859 AD, so about 1,200 years ago it was founded. And they are famous for their birch bark. So in Novgorod, Russia, they had a lot of birch trees. And they would peel the bark off of the birch trees, and the bark was very soft, so they could write letters on it. And what's really cool about Novgorod is that they had very wet clay soil that didn't have a lot of oxygen in it. And so this chemistry makeup of the soil was very cool because it preserved everything. Well, not everything, but almost everything. Because it would preserve hard artifacts like steel or metal. So there are swords that are perfectly preserved. And then soft artifacts like leather or this bark. So what happened is people would write on the bark. They would use tools and they would write on the bark letters, love letters, it would be banking accounts, different types of correspondence, letters to each other on this birch bark, and then it would get preserved in the soil. So you guys can see on this, it says Veliki Novgorod, which is the city. And I have a picture I want to show you guys of an actual birch bark. And this was written by a little boy. He left a message, and this dates back to about 1,000 years ago. So he drew on the birch bark, and he wrote a little message in that ancient text. So pretty cool. So this is really neat because kids would use it to draw on, and we still have these artifacts that are 1,000 years old. So pretty neat. Then over here, I want to show you some of these arrowheads. So I was very lucky when I went to graduate school and college. So graduate school is where you go if you want to keep going to college after college. So I was able to study with some flint knappers who made stone tools. So spear points, arrowheads. So these are some of their tools because they're very, very talented. And I was able to learn how to flint knap with them. So here's some examples of some of the arrowheads that they made. So they're very, very beautiful, and you can see like the different patterns of the flint knapping on there. And you can see they're very, very professional. So it looks, if you saw this on the ground when you were walking, you would think it was like 1,000 years old. So these guys were very, very talented at making their points. And then you can see some of the ones that I made, which aren't as good. But I like to work with glass because it was much easier. Obsidian is pretty easy to work with. But I like glass because it's different colors and it's really pretty. So you guys can see some of mine. And then these are known as bird points, these little guys. And bird points are kind of a joke. So there's a theory that they're used, you could find bird points in the real world, and they're used to shoot down birds, but in reality, a bird point was just when somebody was trying to make something, an arrowhead this size, and then they kept going and going, and it kept breaking and breaking, and then eventually it would get down to this size, because they might be a perfectionist, and they might keep losing the material. So pretty funny. Then the last thing I want to show you guys is pretty cool. Let me grab it. And this is a replica of a dagger that is prehistoric. So you guys can see how cool this is. So this is an arrowhead, or a dagger point. So you guys can see it's serrated, it has the little bumps in this dagger, and it is flint knapped, it's perfectly flint knapped. This is by a master flint knapper in New Mexico whose name is Mr. Tommy, and he did a fabulous job. He's such a skilled artist. And then the handle is antler, so you guys can see a beautiful handle, and then this is sinew around here. And sinew is just the tough fibers of tissue that connect muscle and bone together, so they're tendons. So you take the sinew and you get it wet, and then you wrap it around, and then when it dries, it's really, really hard, so it keeps that together. So this was made in prehistoric style, so if you were to find one of those in the real world, the sinew would probably be all gone because it would be so old. But you would still be able to find the points on this knife, so pretty cool. So yeah, so that's one of my husband's treasures. I had to ask to borrow permission to borrow it today. So that's all I have for my presentation. If you guys have any questions, I'm happy to answer them. I hope you enjoyed it. You got to see all these fun artifacts. So I encourage you, once everything is back to normal in the world, to travel, see other cultures, see archaeological sites, because it's a big world and there's so much cool stuff out there. So thank you.